Have you ever read a horror story that felt too real? One that didn't just scare you, but made you wonder if you'd somehow invited something into your life just by reading it. I love horror stories. Not just the cheap, jump-scare-filled ones that make you flinch for a second and then fade from memory, but the ones that linger, the kind that settle into the back of your mind like an uninvited guest and refuse to leave, the ones that burrow under your skin, making you hesitate before turning off the lights at night, the ones that make you second-guess the harmless creaks of your house and wonder if you're truly alone. So when my university announced an after-hours study program at the old library, I signed up without hesitation. It wasn't just about having a quiet place to read. I already had that. This was different. The program offered something few people got the chance to experience: the library between midnight and 4 a.m. In return, participants would receive a small scholarship grant, just for staying up late and studying. It sounded too good to be true. It was easy money. All I had to do was sit in a historic, dimly lit library and read horror books all night, which, honestly, I already did for free. The idea of getting paid for it felt almost laughable, but as I read through the program's details, something stood out. A catch. Only a handful of students were allowed in each night, and there was a strict set of rules we had to follow. The moment I read them, my excitement shifted into something else: unease. These weren't just standard library rules about keeping quiet or returning books on time. They were horror story rules, the kind that reeked of something unnatural, something hidden beneath the surface. I had read enough creepypastas to recognize the pattern. These rules weren't about maintaining order. They weren't for our safety in a normal sense. They were there to protect us from something lurking in the library's depths. And if horror stories had taught me one thing, it was this: you always follow the rules. I read all the library rules. Rule 1. You may only enter after midnight and must leave by 4 a.m. No exceptions. Rule 2. Check out a book before 12:30 a.m., even if you don't plan to read it. The library must know you're a guest. Rule 3. If you hear whispers from the aisles, do not try to find the source. Keep your head down and keep reading. Rule 4. The woman in the white dress sometimes appears on the second floor. Do not let her see you. Rule 5. If the lights flicker more than 3 times, close your book and leave immediately. Rule 6. At exactly 2:45 a.m., the library will go silent. Do not move until the sounds return. Rule 7. If you hear your name whispered but no one is around, leave your book and exit the building. Do not look back. Creepy, right? But I wasn't stupid. I took the rules seriously. And looking back, that was probably the only reason I made it through the night. I arrived at the library at exactly 11:55 p.m. The air outside was crisp, but as I stepped through the heavy wooden doors, an eerie warmth wrapped around me, like the building had been waiting for us. My backpack was packed with everything I thought I'd need: notes, a few pens, a bottle of water, some snacks, and just in case, a flashlight. The library was almost empty. Only a handful of students were scattered around, looking just as wary as I felt. Miss Dawson, the librarian, sat behind the front desk, her sharp eyes flicking up briefly as I walked in. She was a woman in her 50s, with iron gray hair pulled into a tight bun, and a face that seemed permanently etched into a frown. She didn't speak as I signed in, just nodded slightly before returning to whatever she was reading. At exactly 12:10 a.m., I made my way to the front desk and checked out a book. It was a horror anthology, a collection of unsettling short stories. It felt appropriate for the night, and maybe, in some twisted way, comforting. Ms. Dawson took the book from me, stamped it without a word, and slid it back across the desk. By 12:30 a.m., I had settled into a corner on the first floor, away from the main study area, but close enough to a reading lamp that I didn't have to rely on the library's dim overhead lights. The place was silent, aside from the occasional shuffle of pages and the soft scratch of pens against notebooks. For the first hour, everything felt normal, almost disappointingly so. I read a few pages, took notes, and even found myself getting lost in the book's eerie tales. The atmosphere was heavy, sure, but nothing happened. The library was just a library. But then, at 1:15 a.m., the whispers started. At first, I thought I had imagined it, a soft, barely audible murmur drifting between the shelves, a trick of my tired brain. But then I heard it again, closer this time, a voice, low, faint, like someone was standing just beyond the rows of books, whispering into the darkness. I kept my head down. I kept reading, because I had followed the rules, and I wasn't about to stop now. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just the wind slipping through the old wooden shelves, winding through the narrow aisles, like a breath of air in an ancient tomb. But then it hit me. There was no wind inside the library. The windows were shut tight, and the massive doors hadn't opened since I walked in. The voices weren't coming from the building. They were coming from the darkness, soft at first, a barely audible murmur threading its way between the bookshelves like a secret being whispered just beyond my reach. I gripped my book tighter, my fingers digging into the worn pages. Rule number 3, if you hear whispers from the aisles, do not try to find the source. Keep your head down and keep reading. So I did. I forced myself to focus on the words in front of me, even though they blurred together to an unreadable mess. My breathing felt too loud. My pulse thudded in my ears, drowning out the whispers, but only for a moment, because they were getting louder. What had started as a distant, unintelligible murmur now sounded like a full-blown conversation, just out of reach, just beyond the shelves. The voices twisted and wove together, overlapping in hushed tones, urgent and insistent. And then, a pause, a moment of suffocating silence before I heard my name. Not from the whispers, from upstairs. My stomach clenched so hard it felt like ice had formed in my gut. Rule 7, if you hear your name whispered but no one is around, leave your book and exit the building. Do not look back. Every muscle in my body locked up. The air felt thick, suffocating, as if the very walls of the library were holding their breath. My hands trembled as I carefully set my book down on the table, my movements slow, deliberate. I wasn't about to be the idiot in a horror movie who ignored the warning signs. I had followed the rules. I had done everything right. And now I was getting the hell out. With measured steps, I grabbed my bag and turned toward the exit. And that's when I saw her. She stood at the top of the grand staircase, half shrouded in the darkness of the second floor. The woman in the white dress. Her gown was old-fashioned, the kind you'd see in century-old photographs, the fabric delicate and draping around her like she had just stepped out of another time. Her long black hair spilled over her face, a curtain hiding whatever lay beneath. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. and she was blocking the only way out. My throat went dry. Rule number 4. The woman in the white dress sometimes appears on the second floor. Do not let her see you. I willed myself to stay completely still, my heart hammering so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. Maybe she hadn't noticed me yet. Maybe, if I backed up slowly, I could slip into the shadows before she sees me. Before even I complete my thought, her head snapped up. A sharp jerking motion, unnatural and wrong, as if some invisible force had yanked her gaze toward me. I saw her face for a split second before instinct took over and I ran. Her eyes were empty, black voids where they should have been, and her mouth was too wide, stretched into an unnatural grin, like her skin had been pulled and torn to make room for something that shouldn't exist. And she saw me. I didn't stop running until I was back at my seat. My legs felt weak, my lungs burning from the sudden sprint. But I didn't care. I dropped into my chair, my hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles turned white. I pulled my hoodie up, sinking into its fabric, like it could somehow shield me from whatever had just happened. My breathing was ragged, uneven, but I forced myself to stay quiet. If I made a sound, if I moved too much, would she come back? I had followed the rules, and something still saw me. A cold, creeping dread settled in my chest, heavier than before. I clenched my jaw, trying to focus on the only thing grounding me, the slow, steady ticking of the clock on the library wall. Every second that passed felt stretched, dragging on too long, as if time itself was hesitating, unsure whether to move forward. The minutes ticked by. Then, at exactly 2:45 a.m., everything changed. The library went silent. Not normal silence, not the quiet of an empty room or the hush of a late-night study session. This was wrong. It was like the entire building had been swallowed whole by a vacuum. The low hum of the overhead lights vanished, the faint creaks of the wooden shelves, the subtle rustling of paper, gone. Even the ticking of the clock, the one thing keeping me grounded, had stopped. I held my breath. Even my own breathing felt muted, like the silence was pressing down on my lungs, smothering every sound before it could escape. I remembered rule number 6 at exactly 2:45 a.m. The library will go silent. Do not move until the sounds return. So I sat there, perfectly still. Seconds dragged into minutes. Or maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me. It was impossible to tell how much time had passed. The stillness felt endless, stretching out in every direction, wrapping around me like something alive. Then, a sound, not a whisper, not a footstep, something dragging across the floor, slow, deliberate. A dull, scraping noise, like something heavy being pulled along the ground. My body went rigid. The sound wasn't random. It wasn't distant. It was coming from the second floor. Do not move. Do not move. Do not move. The words repeated in my head like a desperate prayer. The dragging sound continued, unhurried, methodical. It grew closer, creeping down the unseen aisles above me. And then, the staircase, the slow, scraping movement shifted, becoming heavier, louder. It was descending. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms, the sharp pain barely registering through the sheer terror flooding my body. My pulse pounded in my ears, but I didn't move. It reached the first floor. The dragging sound was behind me now, so close. I squeezed my eyes shut, every muscle in my body screaming for me to run, to bolt for the door and never look back. But I couldn't. I knew I couldn't. The sound stopped. For a moment, there was nothing. Just the crushing, suffocating silence pressing down on me. Then, a voice, right against my ear. "I see you." Cold breath brushed against my skin, sending a violent shiver down my spine. My mind barely had time to process the words before the sound returned. The ticking clock, the rustling pages, the distant hum of the lights. The sounds returned all at once, like the world had suddenly remembered it was supposed to exist. The crushing silence was gone, replaced by the familiar noises of the library. Subtle, ordinary, human. I gasped, sucking in air like I had been drowning. My whole body trembled, my hands slick with sweat, my pulse hammering so hard it hurt. I could still feel the whisper against my ear, the ghost of that voice lingering in my mind like a brand burned into my memory. I had followed the rules. I had done everything right. And yet, something still saw me. I wasn't going to wait around to see what happened next. Screw 4 o'clock a.m., screw the scholarship, screw everything. I grabbed my bag with shaking hands, my fingers fumbling over the straps. My chair scraped against the floor as I stood. Too fast, too loud. But I didn't care. I left the book behind. No time to return it. No time to think. I just ran through the rows of books, past the grand staircase, keeping my eyes forward, never glancing back. I half expected to hear footsteps following me, to feel a cold hand snatch at my wrist before I reached the door. But nothing happened. I burst into the night air, my heart still racing, my breath coming in ragged, uneven gulps. The sky was black, the campus eerily still, as if the world outside had no idea what I had just been through. But I knew, and I wasn't coming back. Or at least, that's what I told myself. The next evening, I found myself standing at the library doors again. I hadn't planned to return. Every rational part of my brain told me to stay far away. But something pulled me back. Curiosity, fear, or maybe just the need to understand what had happened. Ms. Dawson was at the front desk, as always. She didn't ask why I had left early. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just looked at me, her sharp eyes scanning my face, like she was searching for something. Some sign, some confirmation that I knew now. "You followed the rules," she said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a fact. I swallowed hard and nodded. She sighed, almost like she had expected me to fail. Then, without another word, she slid a fresh copy of the rule sheet across the counter. "Good," she murmured, her voice quieter this time. "But next time," she tapped a finger on the paper, her gaze meeting mine. "Sit somewhere closer to the exit.